Hello and welcome to our 7th video in our Mod Tool tutorial series. I'm Dragon and today we are going to talk about political parties, infrastructure, buildings and important trading points. A lot of topics, so let me go through them really quick. First of all, political parties. We have covered them a little bit here in the countries editor in one of our previous videos. And here if you select a country and scroll down, you have your political parameter sliders, and you can simulate elections with our default pre-generated political parties. And now we are going to customize them a little bit here in the political parties editor. So let me open this editor. And as you can see, we have a lot of sliders here on the top. These are basic political values and parameters that are going to be global for all of our parties, for all countries and the whole game. The first slider here is the democracy value, and the second slider is the totalitarianism value. The sum of your political parameters determines which political system your country has. So in this case, a country is a democracy if the sum of its political parameters is lower than 30. And a country is a totalitarian country if its political parameter sum is bigger than 60. The next three sliders, random democratic, authoritarian and totalitarian party, determine the chance of affecting in those political systems the standing of a party in the parliament. And here, underneath, there are next democratic, authoritarian and totalitarian sliders, and they determine how many parties are there in a parliament in each of those systems. So totalitarianism has only one political party, authoritarianism has 3, and democratic system has 5 political parties. But we can change this number and increase it or decrease it. And here are two important input fields: lobby cooldown and lobby duration. In Realpolitik 2, a lot of different game features allow you to block them depending on the leading political parties and your parliament composition. In order to actually be able to build something or introduce some projects, you need to lobby your parties, so spend some money and action points on them to convince them to let you do what you would like. Lobby cooldown determines how often you can lobby a party, and lobby duration determines how long a party stays lobbied after pressing the lobby button. Here is the list of our existing parties. As you can see, there are 5 standard default parties here. We can select one of them. For example, let me select Radical Center. We can of course remove it. We can change its name by, for example, changing it to Radical Democrats, and by pressing save. And here underneath the name we can input money cost and action points cost of lobbying said party. So each party can have its own lobbying costs. And here you can input descriptions or localization keys of descriptions of selected party. And of course you can add new party. After selecting one party and clicking add new party button, a duplicate is created, and then you can edit it and, for example, bring back our Radical Center and save it. And if you scroll down here to the bottom, you can also choose party icon, which is pretty straightforward. And also you can choose the ideal militarism, interventionism and personal control values for selected party. So these are the values of your country with which this party is most comfortable with and has the biggest chances of becoming the leading party in your country. So that is the parties and political parameters basic setup. Those values and parties are pretty important if you want your scenario or mod to be a very political one, and it allows you to customize a lot of things. Now let's leave political parties for a moment and let's get into the infrastructure editor. Infrastructure editor is a tool that allows you to change a position on the map of a lot of spawn points, for example for your buildings. So for the example of using the infrastructure editor, I have set up the basic parliament building here for this province number 26. And let's say that I do not like this building being here, first of all because it clips with the province name, and secondly because I want this building on this province to be on this peninsula here. So let me use the selectable mouse mode here and select this province in the infrastructure editor. as you can see, if we sort by selected, it will be here on the top. And now I can select building spawn point. And as you can see, first of all, I can here scale the model size of each infrastructure element on each province independently. So for example, I can scale up this building here, but let's say that values of 10 everywhere are what I am looking for. And I can simply change the position here of this building. So let me, for example, move it a little bit to the left. So like that, not too much. Let's say minus 65 would be enough. And using the Z-axis, I'm going to move it a little bit down, maybe a little bit further. Yeah, perfect. And now this building is here on this peninsula, and it looks pretty okay for me. We can also move it a little bit further down underground, maybe like that, and it looks pretty good right now. And using the same logic, by selecting province and editing the position, rotation or scale of those values here, you can edit each of those points for each of those provinces from the list. And here we have army spawn points, army theater spawn points, spy spawn points, so where the spy is standing, building spawn points, special 1, 2 and 3 event spawn points, and other diagrams, for example in the special map modes. And that is basically how infrastructure editor works. And it is a standard feature of the infrastructure editor. If you go to special, you can also add some special models on the map. Here we have some special models from our Grand Campaign scenario, like Pyramids of Giza, the Great Wall of China, the Eiffel Tower, and so on. And you can place them somewhere on your map and add special soundtracks and special names and descriptions for those models. And just so you know, now when I zoom out the camera, this building will disappear. That is because here in game settings, we need to change this setting right here, max building zoom. If I increase it to, for example, 450 and press enter, now this building will be visible up to the height of 450. And when I zoom out to the maximum, it will disappear. So basically, at the same time when our provinces' names change into country's name, our buildings will disappear from the map. But you can also, of course, change those values independently of each other to create your own unique zoom in and out experience. So now, after talking about the infrastructure editor that allows you to, for example, place buildings whenever you want, let's go to the buildings editor and let's talk about how to create buildings. Here in the top of the buildings editor, you can find building site model, which is the model for the construction site of a newly created building or upgraded building. Here is the ruins model, which lets you select model for a building that was brought down to 0 hit points. And here is the demolition model that lets you select the model for building destroyed. And here is the reconstruction time input field, which is to set up how many days will it take for a building to be rebuilt. And here is an important ticker that allows you to set if the capital province has a building. In Realpolitik 2 in Grand Campaign scenario, our default scenario, each capital province has parliament building, which is mandatory. But if you disable this ticker here, then capital province would not have that building. It would not need to have any building, and you can build anything you want there. And because buildings are the only thing that provides supply range in the game, and supply range is basically an area of effect for army units, here is also supply range effects editor. When units are outside of supply range, these effects will come into play. We have talked about configuring effects in a previous video, so I am not going to talk about it right now, but you can simply set up here army effects that affect any army that is lacking their supplies. So let me go to the building list here. As you can see, I have one building capital here in my buildings list. These are actually not buildings themselves, these are types of buildings, because the actual buildings list is right here. Because buildings have levels, and this building has only one level, level 0, or in the game represented as level 1, and its name is capital. So here is a name field, description field. You can choose an icon for your building, you can choose the sound of your building, and here is what's interesting. Building functionality. You can choose from this drop-down the special function of your building. And most buildings in the game have no special function, but there are some that allows you to open additional windows, pop-ups, and provide you with additional features. So for example, Missile Launcher allows you to open Missile Warfare pop-up and shoot missiles from this building. Stock Market allows you to open Stock Market window and assign index and invest and make profit. NGO is a building owned by a non-governmental organization. UN headquarters is a unique building that allows you to open the UN voting and resolution window. And of course there is the capital special function. And you should have only one building with capital special function, especially if you have the sticker enabled here. Buildings in the game are divided into several categories. We have 4 default categories here, and each building has to belong to one of those categories. This is purely for visualization and clarity reasons. And here we have building limit per world field. If that number is 0, then there is no limit. But if that number is, for example, 1, there can be only one building of this type and this level in the whole world. Next, we have threshold functionality HP. And that is the number which determines how many hit points building has to have until it stops working or starts working again. In this case, if a building has a half of its hit point, it can work normally. Under half, it stops working. Default number of hit points for a building is 100. And here we have tools to select models for land and for water provinces for your buildings. In this case, I have chosen the Parliament model for land and Parliament Colony model for water. And you can also scale those models here, but remember, you can also do it per province in your infrastructure editor. So it is best to determine whether you want to scale your buildings here in the buildings editor or in your infrastructure editor, because both of those scaled values will be applied to your model. Let me show you an example. Let me scroll here and, for example, right now scale up this building. As you can see, it was scaled up in real time, just like I have done it before in the infrastructure editor. And underneath model selection, there are 3 buttons to open configurator of effects for those buildings. And arguably, these are the most important things about buildings, unless they provide some special function. Because these are effects those buildings apply to your province or to your country. You can set up here whatever you like. We have already covered the configurator of effects. But let me point out something really important here. For example, HDI is a parameter that can be modified. So, for example, if my building increases my HDI by 10 and the kind of effect is constant, and I save, when this building is built in this province, my country's HDI will be increased by 10. But when this building is destroyed, if this building is not functioning properly because of its current hit points, or if I demolish this building, my current HDI in my country will be lowered back. So I will lose this bonus. I will lose this modifier. Because the kind of effect was set to constant. So it works only when this building is present and functioning. If I would set up this effect here for forever, the moment this building is built on this province, this modifier would be applied to my HDI, and I would not be able to get rid of it. I could destroy this building, and this modifier would still be present. So it is important to set up all effects for your buildings as constant effects, unless you of course want your effect to be permanent after building some buildings. Underneath effects, you can simply set up money, action points, resources, cost of building your building, and maintenance costs of having your building in your country. And of course, you can set up building time here. So this is a number of days during which the building will be created on your province. You can also set a system requirement for your building. So for example, if I disable the sticker here, democracy will not be able to build this building. And of course, as I have mentioned when talking about political parties editor, you can set up, depending on the system, each political party preference concerning this building. And for example, if you disable this sticker, political parties agree, then far left party will not agree on building capital. But if this sticker here stays enabled, parties agree after lobbying. So when lobbying far left, they will eventually agree to you constructing the capital building on your province. But if you were to disable this sticker here and this sticker here, far left party will never agree on building capital. So for example, if you are a totalitarian state and you have only one party in your parliament, far left party, there is no way you could build this building, unless you of course change the leading party somehow. And you can set up political parties for each building level, and each system independently. And underneath political parties, we have more requirements for building specific buildings. For example, the first line here, required building, lets you set up which buildings you need to have in your country in order to be able to build this building of this level. Here we have required project line. We don't have any projects yet, but when we add them, we can choose which projects are mandatory for this building to be built. The same with required terrain, which has to be present in the specific province. And also we have restricted buildings, because for example, when you build one building in your country, you may not want to have another type of building there. Let me show an example by adding required terrain for this building. Let's say that those buildings can be built only on grasslands. So I choose the grassland from the dropdown and click this plus button here, and now it is added to the requirements list. So those dropdowns only let you choose some parameters, and this is the list of actual requirements. And of course you can select them and remove them from this list. And there is also an option to hide buildings in certain countries. So for example, I can choose Ivory Council from this list of countries that I have created for this mod and add it here. And now this building, even after being built, will never be visible in my Ivory Council country, right here. There is also a second building limit, but this one applies only to your country. 0 means of course there is no limit. 1 means that can be only one building of that type in your country. That is especially useful for your capital building. Those two tickers below are very important. Ensure army production means that this building allows you to build units in it. And ensure supply range means that this building provides supply range. And here you can set up the radius of your supply range. So let me type here, for example, 200 units. And now this building is truly a capital. Let me just select here its special functionality to a capital here. And now this is a capital because I can only have one in my country. It ensures army production, it ensures supply range, and I can also restrict player from manipulating this building too much. For example, I can restrict the player from upgrading this building, building it, demolishing it, or damaging it. And because I believe in this mod, player should not be able to demolish the capital, I'm going to enable here this restriction. Ticker enabled means that player cannot demolish this building. And if you want to create your own buildings, simply press this button Add New here, and an empty building will be created that you can set up just like I showed you, or you can simply delete it. And of course, you can create new levels for your buildings. You need to set them up from scratch, and after setting them up, and after building the level 0 here, the player will have an option to upgrade its level 0 building to level 1. And please note that when you have set up building functionality as capital for your level 0 building, an upgrade of this building has to have the same building functionality. This is the setting that cannot be changed for upgrades. Buildings have to have the same functionality throughout all their levels. Alright, that would be enough about the buildings editor. Let me go really quick about important trading points. Important trading points are a feature of Realpolitik 2 which allow you to choose a couple of provinces and add them special effects for countries that own all or some of those provinces. Here I have clicked this Add Point button and I have created new trade point. I can of course remove it. I can add its name, its description, I can hide it. And here there will be a list of provinces this trade point belongs to. So let me now choose those provinces here. And now with F1 button on my keyboard, I can hover my mouse over a province and I can press F1 and this province was added to the list of the provinces affected by this trading point. So let me add some more provinces. That would be enough. Now those 5 provinces are part of this trading point. You can also add and position and rotate your important trade point model here from this dropdown. But let me go to the participation effects, because this is the most important part of important trading points. You can add a new section, and after adding it, you can set minimal and maximal percentage of shares in those provinces. So 100% is one country owning all 5 of those provinces. So I can, for example, add 2 sections, and one will range from 0.01 to 50%, and second section will range from 50.01 to 100%. And now, if one country owns all of those 5 provinces, it would be affected by effects configured for this section here. So after selecting this section here, by enabling the sticker, I can go to country effects and configure effects, or province effects and configure provincial effects for this section here. And for example, if this trading point were divided between 2 countries and one country would only have 3 provinces and the other would have 2 provinces, then still one country would benefit from this section here and one country would benefit from this section here, depending on their shares of those provinces. You can of course add a lot more sections and create bigger trading points, even spanning across the whole map. Important trade points are a completely optional mechanic and you don't need to use them in your mod. But I highly recommend using them and setting them up because they're a great incentive for players to expand their territories and look for provinces they would want to have inside their borders. That would be it for our 7th video in our mod tool tutorial series. On behalf of the whole Jujubee and Realpolitik 2 team, I wish you Happy New Year and see you next time.